Why isn't Joe Arpaio recalled yet?
What is going on in our community that we can be taken on this ride, this prolonged, extended fantasy?
Randy Perez, president of the Citizens for a Better Arizona, blamed the failed recall on the lack of donors, the lack of volunteers, the lack of buy-in by other elected officials, and the lack of courage to stand up to Sheriff Arpaio.
He's right. There wasn't buy-in. There wasn't help. So I'm not concerned about the officials, the elected officials, Sheriff Joe himself. I'm concerned about all the people who aren't moved at the fact that they're loading up Mexicans by the busload, stopping them at streetlights, putting them into prisons, and turning them into some kind of persecuted second-class citizenry. Randy's a professional. The people who ran this recall, they're all professionals. They know just as well as I do that there is no chance of recalling Sheriff Joe, and yet they took us through this again. According to the statements made on that day, it's not gonna stop. Didn't Lilia say that it doesn't stop here? We will continue. Continue what is the question?
Right.
Continue what? What have we accomplished so far?
I didn't know it was going to be more than recall Pierce. I didn't know it was going to morph into supporting a candidate for sheriff, but once he was done recalling Pierce, then he had another effort underway.
Maricopa County, Arizona has recall fever. I mean, when does it stop?
Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Blaming money for the loss of the recall is like blaming the Powerball machine for not kicking out your number. The win wasn't there. They knew it.
Lilia Alvarez announced that all of the petitions had been shredded, destroyed. And when asked how many signatures there were, her answer was, it's irrelevant.
I think they could have been working on a CIR. They could have been putting this energy towards the DREAM Act all this time. The DREAM Act would have essentially neutralized Sheriff Joe and his behavior. He claims that he's just doing what is the law. And if you change the law, then he will presumably adhere, right? But yet we just go after Sheriff Joe personally to no avail, and it's a waste of our time.
In 2011, Randy took 30% for himself. I bet you if that were any other nonprofit here in the state, people would be up in arms for someone taking 30% of the total cash contribution. People love going after the symptoms and not the cause of the illness. And they use that to filter all this money into their coffers. So they come up with creative titles like pollster and consultant, and they write themselves bigger checks than we're used to seeing for someone who traditionally does that job.
The question here is, where is my recall?
Yeah, where's the recall?
Where's the recall?
Yeah, where?
Didn't we get promised a recall twice? Where's the recall? Instead, what I got is a re-election, and I still have a Sheriff Joe.
The answer has always been comprehensive immigration reform.
Randy Perez has said the issue of immigration is not a litmus test for anybody to join CBA, and I think that's where he's making his tactical error.
The way to take the wind out of Arpaio's sails is to pass comprehensive immigration reform.
I think the community, people who gave and donated money time and time again, ought to know how many signatures there were, what percentage were valid, how close were they. For all we know, all they collected was 150,000, and a few people may have signed their names as Mickey Mouse. We will never know, and that is disingenuous. More importantly, he continued to ask for donations to the very last day. If he knew he was not going to succeed,
I'd like to know how much money has been received collectively by CBA and Respect Arizona since the inception of the recall.
Does Randy need Joe Arpaio to keep the money flowing? Is Joe Arpaio necessary in order for Randy to continue to ask for money?
Randy Perez really has no interest in getting rid of Joe Arpaio. That's not his thing. He's interested in power and money. That's what he's interested in.
He took 30% off of the top for a political consultant, and that doesn't include his personal expense account. And during the Pierce recall, we got expense accounts here for travel money to Washington. Why do you have to go to D.C. to recall Russell Pierce? And at this point, I don't have any proof in front of me that there was ever a legitimate recall effort put on here by anybody other than a bunch of hard-working, well-intentioned volunteers that, in my opinion, was exploited. And I'm angry as heck about it. I'm just going to keep speaking out against these ridiculous fake foul activists that we have out here that's using the community and impersonating activists and community organizers to make a living. I'm going to keep talking against that.
You want to know, where's our recall?
I call it a so-called recall because at that point, that's all it is. A so-called recall.
So-called recall.
A so-called recall.
So-called recall.
We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop now. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop.
So-called recall.
So-called.
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 So-called recall.